Well, I don't have much money, and I don't have much time, and I don't have many friends I could call mine. And I've been deceived, yeah, but haven't we all? I've seen the sun rise, and I've seen the sun fall. Well, I don't know why, and I don't know where, and I don't even know how, and I no longer care. But I've seen your face, and I've heard your call. Yes, I've seen the sun rise, and I've seen the sun fall. Let it go.
Hello and welcome to another SDAQ&A. My very special guest today is Dr. Paul Rankin. How are you, Paul?
I'm doing fine, mate. Bit nervous at the moment, but we'll see
Bit
how we get on.
nervous? Yes, that's what all my guests say. They're a little bit nervous of me.
Yeah, mate. With that sort of hairdo, mate, anyone's scared, be scared.
Hey, welcome to the program. And for those watching, if you know Paul, you know that he is a man of many talents. So when I put in the little credit here below, the little title frame, I thought, yeah, this is one thing of many that Paul has done and does in his life. And currently, we've got here ADRA, op/thrift shop. Our biggest audience is in the States, so they may not know what an op shop is. So I think they might call it a thrift shop. And I think, look, let's start there. Tell us a little bit about your work at ADRA. What does ADRA stand for? And then tell us a little bit about yourself. And then I'm excited to get into this mini series within our series, 5 things I love about Adventism, where I'll be getting guests in to share the 5 things. It might be 2 or 3 or 6, the 5 things that they love about Adventism. There's plenty of things that we've discussed that we can whinge and gripe about. But this is a special little mini series to focus on some of the good things. So over to you, Paul. Tell us a little bit about your op shop work. It's a massive shop. I wish we could bring up some pictures. Maybe in another episode I'll come down and do a little video, and we can do a little live,
a
little live show from there one day.
Yeah, Peter. I on the 1st of January 2020, I went out hang gliding. I'm passionate about flying. Went out hang gliding and messed up a landing, and in the process broke my neck. Had a fracture of C1, C2. Finished up in hospital, and so I took retirement a year or so before I had planned to, because of course COVID came in and we had to work from home, and I just couldn't do the 8 hours a day on the computer. And after about 3 months of retirement, I got a phone call and say, Paul, would you manage the ADRA op shop in Morisset? And I said, no. And they called me a second time and I said, no. And the third time, basically just to get them off my back, I said, okay, I'll pray about it, which I did. And that was a mistake, I joke, but no, it's been great. And for the last 2.5 years, I've been managing the ADRA. ADRA is Adventist Development and Relief Agency, and they operate 30 actually op shops. I think we call them op shops here. For the American audience, people give us stuff and we sell it, on-sell it, and it's all staffed by volunteers. And so you've got to pay rent and everything else, but everything else goes back into the local community. And the work we're doing in the local community is phenomenal. And my passion right through my ministry has been to see the Adventist church interacting in a very positive way with the community. And the op shop does that in a way that I have never seen before. It's just phenomenal. The incredible interactions that we have with the community and the positive interactions we have with the community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you just to give people an idea of the size, it is at least as big as a football field, isn't it?
Yeah, it would be. It's 2,000 square meters, which is what square feet. I'm not sure what that comes to in square feet, but yeah. It's a very large warehouse.
And it's very well stocked. The items you keep are, the best of the what would you say, secondhand, thrifty.
Yeah, very much so.
From books, clothes, all sorts of things.
Furniture, crockery, cutlery, and it keeps changing all the time.
Yeah,
we actually have customers that come in every day that we're open because the stock changes so quick. They just want to see what's there. Yeah,
it's become a little bit of a social hub too.
Yeah, look,
I love that vibe.
Yeah, and Peter, there's a number of factors that we've got about 190 active volunteers. Most of them are retired because that's where people have got time to volunteer. And it's very much family for these people. This is their social hub, their social network. But also, we have a large number of customers. We've got a real estate agent that comes in every Sunday morning.
Yeah.
Even Father's Day, she was in there at the op shop despite her husband's complaints, because it's become very much her social network and interaction. And then beyond that, we support 5 food pantries in the local area. We give high school scholarships to students who have graduated from the local state high school to go to university. We support a boxing program for disadvantaged children at the local Police and Citizens Youth Club. There's an enormous amount of projects we're actually involved with in the community, which is just so exciting.
It is fantastic. So that's one of the 5, and we'll come back to that a little bit because I want to unpack that a little bit more, but I wanted to start there just to let people know what you're currently doing. Tell us a little bit about the history of Paul Rankin, where you were born, grew up, various jobs you've had within the Adventist Church.
And I was born in New Zealand, in Auckland, and my parents actually converted became Adventists. They actually rented a house in a place called Monterey, and the landlord was a Seventh Adventist. And he brought them into the church when I was about 2. Dad felt a passion to go to theology, so he came over to Avondale when I was a 5-year-old, did theology here, went back to New Zealand. Then we went out to Papua New Guinea when I was a teenager. Came back to boarding school. I did my nursing training at Sydney Adventist Hospital. Had a motorbike accident, and then went and did my theology training. Worked for 6 weeks as a minister and thought, nah, this is not my calling. Went back nursing for 3 years.
I've got to pause you just there.
Met my wife.
That really surprised me when we chatted about that over lunch recently. I said 6 weeks.
Yeah.
We might come back to that. Keep going.
And then I came back after I'd been married. Went back nursing, met my wife, got married, came back into ministry. Worked in New Zealand for 3 years, then out in Papua New Guinea for 5 years. In South New Zealand, a place called Dunedin for a couple of years. Then I was director of Warburton Health Resort for a couple of years back in Christchurch. And then during that time, I did a master's in public health. And then they asked me to be health director for the New Zealand Pacific Union Conference. Whereas when I got introduced to the CHIP program, and then I came over to the South Pacific Division as associate health director and responsible for the CHIP program for Australasia, Asia, and Africa, doing training for that, and also developed Forgive to Live program and other health programs. Primarily, once again, my interest was seeing the church interact with the community in a positive way, and seeing someone's health change for something like a CHIP program. The influence you have on those people is just incredible. And then spent a year as health director for Greater Sydney Conference. Had a hang gliding accident. So my career started with a motorbike accident, finished with a hang gliding accident. And for the last 2.5 years, I've been working managing the op shop in Morisset.
And when you talked there about your work as health director, did you say?
Correct.
That was at the South Pacific Division, the
Well,
SPD.
New Zealand Pacific Union Conference, and then Associate Health Director at the South Pacific Division of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've had really a broad spectrum of experience there within the Adventist Church at grassroots level, right to the top at the SPD. And I love that weaved in through all that is this notion and this desire that you have is to contribute to community. And even in this forced retirement, you're continuing on with that.
Yeah, and Peter, it comes from a very strong conviction that Jesus lived and died to bring about the kingdom of heaven right here and now. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. That's not sometime in the future. That's here and now. Luke 4, when he talks to his thing and reads the prophecy from Isaiah, he said, today this is fulfilled in your presence. Matthew 4, Matthew 10, tell them the kingdom of heaven is here. And our job is to share that kingdom. My job is not to convert people. That's the Holy Spirit's job. My job is to build relationships with people that the Holy Spirit can use if and when he chooses to do so. I have this passion to show people what the kingdom of heaven looks like right here and now.
Living in the moment, helping in the moment.
Yeah.
Well, let's get to our 5 things I love about Adventism list. How many things are on your list today?
Look, I've got 5 or 6 things there, mate. And then there's some subcategories within those.
Yeah.
And Peter, let me say, there are some things that really distress me about the Seventh-day Adventist Church, but there's some things that the church has really advantages. There are real advantages in being associated with the Adventist Church.
And I think everyone who watches SDAQ&A will know that I certainly look at all the sides of Adventism, and I'll put my 2 cents worth in, and there's some vigorous, robust conversations.
So as there should be.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's why I also want to pad out this side, and you and I could have a conversation where we looked at some of the things that we felt could see warrant improvement. But today is all about, let's look at some of those good things.
Positive things.
Yeah.
And Peter, the first thing I had on my list was working as an Adventist minister. One of the churches I went to, the first day I was at the church, the senior elder gave me a letter, his resignation letter, stating that he had been having an affair with one of the women in the church for some time. He had no intention of stopping that. And because of the way that I was paid as an Adventist minister, I could deal with that up front without having to worry about where my next paycheck was coming from. Whereas some of the colleagues that I knew at the local ministers' fraternal, if they did something like that, because they were paid by their local congregation, their pay just dried up.
Right.
And so because of the church's structure, I was paid by the conference. And so I wasn't dependent upon, being scared about that. Likewise, when I worked in Papua New Guinea, I had friends out there who were working Adventist Frontier Mission, it happened to be. And the wife was writing 90 letters a month to make sure that her funding kept coming because they were privately funded. And that was before the days of email where you could do a mail merge and send out 90. She had to handwrite those letters and post them out. Massive amount of work. I was paid at that stage by the South Pacific Division because I was an expatriate missionary. I never had to worry about where my next paycheck is coming from. And that fact that the churches all work together, and they have to they get the money goes to the local conference, really helps provide security if you're employed by the church, but also helps provide continuity. So that was the first thing I had on the list, which for me has been an enormous advantage.
Yeah, and I think that gives you a certain ability to not have to please people in the congregation, because you know that your income is solid. So there's no kind of, okay, well, if you're not going to help me, I'm going to pull out my funding for you. Which
exactly.
Yeah. Can you think off the top of your head other things that are positive about that you've seen out there working in the field where it has benefited the local church pastor to have that kind of support? Or I guess we've kind of covered that already.
Covered that, and it also coming along with that comes a level of accountability beyond just the local the local congregation, but a accountability to the conference, to the high level of the conference, and that can be very valuable too.
Right. Great. So that's number one.
Yeah. Peter, number two that I looked at was their church's ability to run institutions. I did my nursing training at Sydney Adventist Hospital. I'm a graduate of Avondale University, both in my undergraduate degree and in my PhD. That was part of the church, because of the way that it's organised, is able to run institutions like that. If you look at the US situation, I've had a little bit to do with some of the Adventist health systems over there, Florida Hospital, Kettering. They're massive institutional bases, which have been able to happen because of what the church has done. There are colleges. I worked I was a kid in Papua New Guinea in 1972. My father was principal of the Adventist high school there. There was only 4 high schools that offered year and 12 in Papua New Guinea in those days. It was actually harder to get into year 11 in Papua New Guinea per head of population than it was to get into medical school in Australia, because of the educational system. One of those was operated by the Adventist Church. The national government in Papua New Guinea actually nationalised all the education system, refused to give any funding to any of the systems that did not join. The Adventist Church was the only church system that stayed independent. As a result of that, 25% of the people who went through year 11 and 12 were Seventh-day Adventists, or in some cases a higher ratio than that. And that's why in Papua New Guinea now, 30% of the national parliament have a Seventh-day Adventist background, have a Seventh-day Adventist. They're not all good Seventh-day Adventists, but they have that background and that education. And that only happened because of the worldwide sisterhood of churches was able to fund and keep the education system independent in Papua New Guinea. And so that part of that comes back to the Adventist principle of tithing, that regardless of what your income is, it's not who gives the most, but everyone is encouraged to give 10% of their income, whether that's $20,000 a year or $2 million a year. That tithing that goes right across, which enables to fund and provide these institutional educational opportunities that we really don't see in a number of other denominations. I mean, the Seventh-day Adventist Church has got the largest Christian education system and largest Christian health system. The only other denomination that comes close to it is the Catholic system.
So the Adventist system is even bigger than the Catholic system.
I think from a health perspective, I think yes. From an educational perspective, no. I think the Catholic's bigger.
Right.
I don't have the specific figures on me at the moment.
No, but
yeah,
huge.
Yeah, it's huge. It really, and I mean, you look at the amount of countries that ADRA's operating in at the moment. I've got a friend here who works for ADRA International. He's just been to Yemen. It's really hard to get into Yemen, but because of the institutional and the way that organises, it enables that to operate.
Yeah,
which I think has really, really advantages. Yeah.
So that's like a financial autonomy in some ways, because it's funded from outside, so local government doesn't affect it as much.
Correct.
And also it's respected because what you're offering is a high-level education system, high-level health.
That's right.
Yeah.
Excellent. The next thing I had listed down there as a real advantage of the Adventist, of being an Adventist, is the whole concept of the Great Controversy. While I have some questions with the actual book, The Great Controversy, I think there's some really good stuff in there. I think some of the approaches it takes were suitable for the late 1800s, but are missing the mark now in our time and age. And we've got a very different geopolitical situation from what we had then, which I think needs reinterpreting. But this concept of the fact that there is this battle between good and evil, and that we're all part of that, and that there is that God is eventually going to make things right in this world. That is a very, very powerful message, which the Adventist Church has adopted largely due to the influence of Ellen White in the earlier days of the Adventist Church. And I think that overarching concept and understanding of history in a biblical base, and part of that, which I also really appreciate in the Adventist Church, is the value that the Adventist Church gives to the Old Testament. A lot of evangelical Christians basically disregard the Old Testament, whereas the Adventist Church sees the whole Bible as the canon of Scripture and works with both the Old and the New Testament and looks at them very, very closely. And I think that has given a very, very worthwhile and, for me, very useful dynamic in which to operate as an individual and which to operate within my own worldview and the own way that I see myself and see the world around me. And I find that very, very valuable.
It's like they're offering not only in your first 2 points that secure kind of financial and institutional frame, but overarching that, whether you agree with it or not, is a secure ideology
Yes.
as well.
Yes.
I was doing some research into why Adventists, particularly around Loma Linda, were included in that bracket of a few spots in the world where people live longer.
The blue zones.
Yeah, the blue zones. And one of the contributors that this particular article was putting forward was that perhaps the main reason was this sense that people are clustering together underneath a generally agreed upon ideology that brings community together, but that it is also held together by what you're saying, this cohesive structure.
Yes.
So you're bringing people together in a way that's a bit systematized under a similar kind of belief, and that creates this sense of belonging that apparently is something that contributes to
something very, very important.
Yeah.
And an interesting factor that came out of that study by Dan Buettner, was the one that did the research in the blue zones, was that the Adventist population was the only one that was passing down their longevity. Places like Okinawa, Sardinia, place in South America, whose name escapes me at the moment, they're losing it. With McDonald's coming in and all the other stuff, their diet's changing, their sociological structures are changing, whereas the Adventists are passing on their longevity, which was a very, very interesting perspective. Yes.
And the benefits of that, if you look at a collective of people collectively, community collectively, the concepts that are more troubling or the things that you might disagree with don't seem to slow that train down.
Yeah, and look, disagreement is something that happens, mate. You look at Acts 15 and the Jerusalem Council. And if you read between the lines, they were yelling and screaming at each other, mate. They weren't sitting around in a gentleman's club having a friendly conversation, sort of. That has always, the disciples had their differences of opinions. You look at Galatians and the way that Paul talks to Peter there.
They were rejecting.
How growth happens. Pardon?
They were rejecting him initially.
Yeah, correct. And Paul tells Peter off in no uncertain terms, mate. Yeah. That happens. But that's how growth happens, from that discussion, from that interaction.
And I think, and I've noticed this since leaving the church, is that sense of identity has been difficult to recalibrate.
Yes.
And I've managed to do it, but I'd say it took a good 5 years.
Yes.
To do so. And part of the success of my being able to do that was keeping in touch with the Adventist friends that I'd made.
Yes.
And I still love ADRA, and I still love Sanitarium Health Food Company, and I still love haystacks.
Yeah. And growing out of that talk about the blue zones, of course, is another positive, is very much the health message.
And this is number 4?
Number 4, yeah. And a lot of my professional life within the Adventist Church has been associated with health ministry. My PhD research was looking at participants that had done the CHIP program. We actually had we had 5,000 participants. We've now got 12,000, a database on 12,000 people who have done the CHIP program. The CHIP program is the Complete Health Improvement Program, which was actually initially founded by Dr. Hans Deal, who unfortunately passed away just over a month ago.
Oh, really?
But
I was going to ask who started that.
Yeah. That was quite sad. But the impact that the CHIP program has had globally has just been phenomenal. And it's that basic the basic Adventist health principles of a plant-based diet, exercise, rest, meditation, rest, Sabbath rest, but also time out, family time. These principles have been shown over and over again. Gary Fraser's work with the Adventist Health Study has shown over and over again. Gary suggests that the average Adventist lives 13 years longer than his contemporaries. And that's not the Adventists who's skinny and healthy. That's Adventists generally. If you look at it, sorry, lives 9 years longer. If you look at the benefits from a really healthy Adventist, can be up to 13 years on average. And the other really key factor is that the period of deterioration at the end of life for a healthy Adventist is a lot shorter. As we said, Hans Deal died just recently. He was fit and healthy till about 3 or 4 weeks before he died. I don't mind the thought of dying. That's fine. But being in a rest home and not recognizing my wife and having some nurse taking me to the toilet, nah, thanks very much.
Yeah. And I think too, if you could criticize the source of the health message. We're not going to, but there's things that you could critique about it. But ultimately, that the focus was, let's be healthy, regardless how it came about, regardless of some of the false focus points. That you've set a North Star view. Let's get healthy. Let's get healthy. And so here we are 170, 80 years later. And that focus has turned into programs like the CHIP program.
Correct.
And a health food company and etc.
Yeah. 1863, I think, was the Otago vision. And that was where the principles of a plant-based diet, exercise, not smoking, that was back in the days when doctors were prescribing cigarette smoke for people with asthma sort of thing. And this, and the concept of, Mervyn Harding, just after the war, when did his PhD at Harvard, wanted to look at vegetarian diet. And the consensus was, stupid. No one can live on a vegetarian diet. Now it's become he actually finished up doing his PhD, but now it's become acceptable worldwide. You look at movies like Game Changers and that sort of thing, which have no Adventist connection, but are out there proposing the benefits of a whole food plant-based diet. Athletes like Serena Williams, Carl Lewis, who've done so much better since they adopted a whole food plant-based diet. It's become, when my wife and I were courting, mate, 38 years ago, you go to a restaurant and ask for a vegetarian meal, you might get an omelette if you're lucky. Now you go to Peter, you and I were out for a meal a couple of days ago. Half the menu was vegetarian and vegan sort of thing.
Yeah, it was nice. It was good. Yes, so that's a good point. So that's number 4.
Yeah, and look, number 5, Peter, and it's a little bit more, what shall I say, indeterminate, but is the social aspect of being a Seventh-day Adventist. And you touched on that a little bit before when you commented about how it was leaving that. But there is a worldwide network. My kids and I, about 15 years ago, when they were there, I had a health conference in Geneva with the church, and we took the kids to Europe. We decided we'd go into debt, and we took the kids to Europe for 5 weeks. We went to church in London, and sitting in front of us was a bloke who'd been the senior elder in one of the churches I pastored in New Zealand. And my youngest daughter said, "Dad, I can't go anywhere in this world without you knowing someone." she was not happy about it, but there is this network, and it's not that we go to church and it's the same 3 hymns and that sort of thing at every church we go to. There's a wide variety in worship styles, and that's great. I really enjoy that. But there is a worldwide family, which is, I think, invaluable.
Yeah, look, I think, have you got more? Because those 5
the 5 points, yeah.
Yeah, because I the point of my Wednesday interviews is to be concise and brief and hit the point, hit the nail on the head, and you've done that so well.
Well, we spent 3 hours talking about it the other day, mate. You almost missed your daughter's performance.
I know. I know. We were kind of encapsulating a lot of what we're talking about in the
Yeah,
real
yeah.
world: community, good food, conversation, a sense of belonging, knowing. I recently sang at a community bush dance, it was a family night, family games night sort of thing, and it wasn't an Adventist one. It was just a general
Yeah.
community one, but it was bringing together a lot of different people that didn't know each other. And the thought that hit me is that when I do a bush dance games night for Adventist community, even if you're bringing in people from other towns and whatever, there's a sense of knowing each other that increases the camaraderie during the evening. And I spent quite a while building camaraderie with this group that didn't have it to start with because they didn't really know each other.
Yes.
And we had a good night, but it just was something that hit me that, and we've talked about this. Wherever you go, there's someone you'll know, and you can have that sense of camaraderie, and you can have that sense of camaraderie even in the disagreement. There's friends I have that I totally disagree with on ideological points, but we still enjoy, a catch up. And I guess that I hope, being positive again, I hope that the Adventist Church um, doesn't forget this concept that it's okay to have dissidents. It's okay to have people that have different views. It's okay to hold in tension a lot of the different theological, ideological, political views and stances that they have, because otherwise it could lose some of these great 5 points that you've talked about.
Yeah, and Peter, I mean, if you look at the theory of change, change happens because there's people out the front driving it, and there's people at the back dragging the chain. But it's the compromise between those two extremes that gets real and worthwhile change.
Yes, yeah, I agree. Okay, recap the 5 points, and then we're going to say farewell to everyone for this week.
Yeah, okay. So very quickly recapping, first of all was being employed as a Seventh-day Adventist minister, the security of knowing that your pay was coming from the conference, not from your local congregation. That provided real benefits. The ability of the Adventist Church, because of the way it's structured, because of the way it's financed, to be able to operate educational health institutions, and the worldwide impact it's been able to have is absolutely phenomenal. We touched very briefly on the great controversy theme and the theological worldview perspective, a framework that gives me to operate in is something I really value. The health message, the CHIP program, as we said, the Complete Health Improvement program, the impact that this health message has been able to have, and the longevity that Gary Fraser talks about in his research, others at the Adventist Health Studies, and then finally the worldwide family, the connectedness within the Adventist Church.
That's fantastic. Great. Well, this is the first in a little mini series I'll be doing, not necessarily in order. Sometimes my mini series kind of a few weeks later they kick off again. So I'm glad that you've been first cab off the rank. You've nailed my intention, and I've really appreciated our conversation today. A quick plug before I get everyone to thank you, and shoot up those love hearts in Facebook, and those watching on YouTube, click that like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell. If you'd like to support my channel, you can hold up your phone to your computer, and there's a little QR code there, or you can simply go, where is it? Let me find the other option I have here that just lets people know. There we go. If you go to paypal.me/Peter Dixon Music, those donations really help me continue running the channel. A lot of people have been expressing an interest that they enjoyed that song I play at the intro. It's available on Spotify. If you look up Standing at the Cross, there's a whole album of that kind of music there. There's been some comments and questions and queries, but I'm going to leave them for the Facebook group. So if you'd like to join the Facebook group, the link is in the description below. And yeah, come and join in the conversation. That's always a fun thing to have. Well, thanks once again, Paul Rankin. I've really enjoyed our conversation today, and I look forward to catching up with you at Chilled again for a nice
Yeah, that was good.
vegan salad. That was yummy. And continuing this journey of life. Thank you very much. Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone. We'll see you all next time.